Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this virtual forum, which is set to discuss, amongst other things, the future of cricket and the global impact of the game in the next few years. Delighted to be joined by our chair, Sir Michael Barber, and of course, our CEO, Gordon Hollins, and of course, the award-winning Ben Warren as well. Just in case anything goes horribly wrong, Ben can magically press the buttons and ensure that everything is fine again. Just a bit of housekeeping. This is being live streamed via YouTube rather than as we've done Zoom in the past. So if you have a question that you would like to ask in the course of the debate, then please do so utilizing the chat function on our YouTube channel. There's a slight set agenda, if you will. So Michael will be starting us off and talking about the global landscape of cricket. If you've got any questions for Sir Michael, please do pop them in that chat function, and then we'll move on to Gordon, who will conclude with his take on things as they stand. Again, if you've got any questions, please do pop them in the chat. Due to a long-standing family commitment, so Michael will have to leave us at around about 8 o'clock. So if you've got any questions for him, then please do pop them up reasonably soon in the chat. But I guess we should start at the start. Allow me to introduce Sir Michael Barber, the chair of Somerset County Cricket Club, who is going to start by looking at the global landscape and how cricket fits into that in the next few years. Sir Michael.
Thank you, Spencer. And I don't know the answer to what's going to happen to the global landscape, but I can try and sketch it out for you. And before I go anywhere, though, I just want to congratulate Ben on Somerset winning in the Business of Cricket Awards, the first place award for digital. And it's great. We've won it before, and we are doing really well on the whole digital front. I'll come to other awards in a minute. I'm going to start with the ECB. For quite a long time, including into the 2022, well into the 2022 season, the ECB was, I think the only word I can use for it is dysfunctional. You couldn't get a straight answer. You didn't know who to go to. There were some very decent people in leadership, but they weren't coordinated. They didn't have a strategy. They didn't have a plan. They were very cautious about sending out anything in case it leaked, and some people in the ECB did leak things. It was all a bit of a mess. That was the season I started as chair, and Gordon knows this much better than I do, because further back before that chaotic phase, Gordon himself was at the ECB for a long time. So it's the thing I want to start by saying is it's changed. Gordon and I were at a big gathering of the first class counties and the ECB on Friday in Bristol. What was very clear was that there is now an emerging strategy. There is a sense of direction. Richard Thompson and Richard Gould, who we obviously from Somerset know well, Richard Gould is the chief executive, Richard Thompson's the chair. They do have a vision. They do communicate well. They do know what they want to do. They are open to suggestions. They do engage in consultation, all big changes. They've also, by the way, got 8 new board members in total. So the whole organization, the governance of it is radically different. And there are changes happening. Gordon is better informed than me about this in the staff. So several departures and some arrivals. But overall, I think that the organization will slip away. So we'll slip away in size, so it'll reduce, not slip away altogether. It'll reduce in size and will be, I think, will be leaner, fitter, and have much greater clarity of direction. All of that is good news. They, if you ask them what their strategy is, in headlines, it's making cricket the most inclusive sport in the country. It's growing the game, both the women's game and the men's game, dramatically, and they've got lots of evidence that is already happening, and they want to continue that dramatically, and helping guide the English and Welsh game through the massive global transformation that is happening in cricket. Now those are headlines, but they do have some of the detail behind that. They've got more to do. I was also very struck by how open they are and how much they emphasize transparency. They had a whole lot of slides. When somebody asked about a year ago if they could have the slides, that was all very confidential. Now they're just going to be circulated. That's a step. When Gordon and I want to talk to somebody at the ECB, whether it's Richard Gould or Richard Thompson, they're always open to that So it's changed dramatically, which leads me to the ECB attitude to Somerset County Cricket Club. And I have to say that Friday confirmed and took further my belief that they have great respect for us and great admiration for Somerset. They see that we are a county with constrained resources. We don't have a test ground. We don't have a 100 franchise, but performing at a top level, winning the T20 Blast made a big difference. And in the Business of Cricket Awards that I mentioned on digital, we won more awards than any other county. We won the award for digital, which was fantastic, that I've mentioned. We won the award for growing the women's game, which is fantastic and very important. And we won the award for being a welcoming place to come, and the way the ground is managed. Now, these are not small things. They're all big, significant awards. And congratulations, obviously, to our executive team who've performed at that level. But what I'm mentioning here is those things that you combine winning the Blast with being the top performing county in the Business of Cricket Awards. And we get a lot of respect and credit for that at the ECB. And obviously Gordon, overseeing that as chief executive, gets a lot of credit. I, as chair, just bask in the credit without delivering it. But the executive team have done a fantastic job. And then you add into that our pathway. James Rue and Bash, as we call him, have been picked for the England team that's now in the UAE, and will the Lions, and that's fantastic. So people, our young players, breaking through into the England ranks. So this is our reputation there is good, and that is very important because there are some big decisions, and Gordon and I will both refer to this, big decisions to be made at the ECB over the next several months, where our reputation will be very important. What is the EC? I'll come to that in a minute, what the decisions are, but I just want to say some things about the growing the game that they're talking about. And this is quite radical. Let me start with something that I never thought I'd find myself talking about. Cricket is going to be an Olympic sport, not in 2024 next year in Paris, but in Los Angeles in 2028. I'm not quite sure what the rules are. I think it might be a T10, that kind of thing, competition, be a relatively limited number of teams, but it's going to be an Olympic sport. And then around that, you hear very quirky things. I met somebody who played cricket for Croatia against Belgium. Belgium won. I met somebody who was being considered as a possible fast bowling coach for the German women's cricket team. Who would have thought we'd find ourselves talking about this? A year ago, Ireland played Pakistan in Lahore at women's cricket. These are things that were almost unimaginable a few years ago. By the way, in the Olympics, it's been an Olympic sport once before in 1904 in Paris, where Britain won the gold medal and the French got the silver medal. Britain was represented not by a team selected from across the country, but by the Devon Wanderers. The Devon Wanderers team was picked as it stood, went out to Paris and won the gold medal against the French. I don't think either the Devon Wanderers or the French will feature in the Olympic final in 2028, but you never know. What else about growing the game? The growth in the women's game is really strong, and Gordon and I saw some great statistics on this. It's growing in number of participants, it's growing in number of attendances and matches. We saw our games sell out this season for the Ashes. Next season, we're already ahead of that in selling tickets for the Pakistan-England women's game in late May of next year. But you would have thought an Ashes match was going to sell faster than a game against Pakistan, but that's not true. The growth in the women's game is such that's actually ahead of schedule. So that's very exciting. And there are lots of national statistics on this. The other thing is the viewing audiences, which are important for attracting Sky money and other money from broadcasters. Over 30% of those viewing cricket these days on Sky are women. Half of all, if you just total up all the amount of women watching sport, half of it is cricket. This is fantastic. And then when you go beyond women to total attendances, last year, this season just finished, the 2023 season, 3.11 million people actually attended cricket matches. That's the highest it's ever been all the way through the history of cricket in this country. And the ECB has a plan to get that to 4 million. This year, over nearly 850,000 people went through the turnstiles for the T20 Blast, which is the biggest attractor of viewing in attendances. So these are really striking things. And on broadcast, there were records broken. If you take the top 10 events on Sky, sporting events on Sky in 2023, 5 of those top 10 peak viewing figures were cricket. Who would have thought? That's pretty remarkable. It's a pity, obviously, that our England team didn't do terribly well in the World Cup, because that would have maintained that. But for home broadcasting, we're doing really well. That's what the ECB means growing the game. More people watching cricket, more people attending cricket matches, more women being part of all of that, more people playing cricket, more people coming through pathways into men's and women's cricket. And there's a real sense of ambition, and people see us as a very good, effective part of that growing the game. So what are we, Gordon and I, campaigning for or arguing for when we meet the ECB? Why does our reputation with them matter so much? Well, the first thing is, I mean, we as a board and our exec team, and I think everybody who supports Somerset, want to be sure that Somerset is at the top table of English cricket, not just this season when we won the Blast, but next season, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15, 20 years from now, when our children and maybe our grandchildren, in my case, will be coming to watch cricket. We want to make sure Somerset is at the top table, whether it's in 4-day cricket, 1-day cricket, T20 cricket. And we have to do that in a time at the moment when we are not funded in the way that clubs with test match grounds and 100 franchises are. But that's our big argument. And we would love to, obviously that means staying in the County Championship Division 1. We'd love to win the County Championship Division 1. Gordon and I have talked to Andy Hurry, our Director of Cricket, about that. So that's one big thing, maintaining our performance levels in the Blast. And we had a record-breaking season, so to maintain that is no mean feat. But we could, if we won the Blast next season, 2024, we would be the first team in history to win the Blast in consecutive years. We'd like to give that a try. We'd like to set that as a goal. We're bold in that sense. In those things, we spend time debating the schedule. Gordon repeatedly points out, and the ECB have got the message, that there's not enough cricket, to put it mildly, in Taunton in August when the school holidays are on. We're working on that. I don't think we'll make that much impact for 2024, but who knows beyond that. The next thing we're arguing for is about the 100. We were excluded from the 100 in the first round. People in and around Somerset were unhappy about the 100 for many reasons, but not least the fact that Somerset wasn't able, had it wanted to join it. There is a review of the 100 happening right now, and it will complete, we expect, in the first half of next year, not quite sure of the date. There's talk about possibly expanding the 100 and adding 1 or 2 franchises. Our view as a board, and Gordon and my view personally, is that if there is going to be 100 for the foreseeable future, which there is, because the current version runs, the current broadcasting thing runs to 2028, and then the next one will run far beyond that. If there is, it will be better for us to be in it than not in it. And in fact, I think counties that aren't in it in the next phase will, in effect, whether they like it or not, find themselves in a kind of second-class status. So we are hoping, aiming, and hoping is a bit too loose, we're aiming to get into the 100 if we possibly can. There's talk of expanding it by one team and then another team, so from 8 to 10 teams. There's a possibility of a kind of 2-division league with 8 teams in the first division and 10 in the second division, what they call a pyramid. We'll see whether that comes through. We would want to be in the first division of that. We've made it very clear to the ECB that if they stuck at the end of this with 8 teams, we will challenge vigorously any idea that it should be only open to the 8 current teams. Like, if they're going to have only 8 teams, that should be a free and open competition into which we would join. We repeatedly make the point to the ECB that although we get no cricket in Somerset in August, no 100 cricket, and we lose 9 players to the 100, so we're very committed to it. We provided 2 of the captains for the 8 franchises, so 25% of all the captains of the 100 teams were Somerset players. And the Southwest is completely neglected. 6 million people, no Premier League rivalry, and we're not, the whole region is out of it. So we're pushing very hard that if there is an extra team or 2, we would want to be one of those. And we are talking with Gloucester about if we had to do a collaborative thing, we would be open to that conversation. But that to us is fundamental, because if you're not in the 100 in a few years' time, you're almost certainly going to be second-class status. So all of that argument is being made. And then the final thing I'll say just before finishing my contribution, and please feel free to ask anything, is we are also focused on the 2024 season. We haven't forgotten that there's a season coming up starting in April. As you all know, Gordon will be leaving us after an amazing contribution and fantastic leadership at the end of March. We're in the process of appointing his successor, which is a very tough act to follow. We're talking, and Andy and Jason, the coach, are thinking hard about the county championship squad, about who's going to come through from the pathway, about making sure the players get a varied and important experience during the winter in Australia or UAE or Pakistan or wherever they want to go, and they keep in touch with us so that they're ready to roll at the beginning of next season. We want to win the Blast again. We want to make sure we've got a team that compete in the county championship and the T20 Blast, and we'd like to have a stronger team in the One Day Cup where our young players got some good experience, and we performed better this year than last year, but there's more to do. So we're very focused on that season as we think about the future. But I want to finish by saying the future is going to be radically different whether we like it or not, and the question is how we become part of that. Just go back to the beginning. Imagine that you've got an English cricketer, or a recently retired English cricketer, being considered to be the fast bowling coach for the German women's cricket team. That is just one example of how the world is changing. It's changing radically. We need to be part of it. We want Somerset to be a legendary cricket team well into the middle and beyond of the 21st century.
Well, Michael, thank you very much indeed. We have had a few questions come in on the chat. Let's start off with one from Alex. How important is it, as part of the broader ECB approach to growing the game, that Somerset works to achieve growth via state schools, working communities, and the whole of the Southwest? I mean, this is key, isn't it? I mean, we've talked a lot about cricket should be a game for everyone, haven't we? And there should be no barriers, whether they be ethnic, socioeconomic, religious. You know, if we're going to make cricket the most inclusive sport in the Southwest, it's key that there are no barriers.
Yes, absolutely, and we are. The question was how important it is. It's very important. It's very important to us because if you're going to be a great team in the future, you've got to widen the net, open the funnel to the pathway to the widest number of potentially talented people, and getting much more state school involvement in the pathway is a specific goal of Somerset County Cricket Club. The Kent match, which is the last home county championship match, I arranged to meet 7 or 8 state school head teachers to discuss exactly that with the head of our pathway, Matt Drakeley. And because it rained all day, we had plenty of time to talk about this and not any distraction of cricket in the rain. But it is a really important thing. I personally, as Matt Drakeley will testify, I'm taking an interest. We're about, in fact, we've just made an appointment specifically to the pathway team to open up the pathway more broadly to state schools. And by the way, I'm talking here about girls and boys. I've also talked to some of the well-known private schools like King's College Taunton that we're in touch with. And shortly I'm going to Blundell's in Tiverton, talking to them about, well, we want to maintain those relationships. They've been great historic relationships, and cricketers like James Rue and both our opening batters in the T20 team, Banton and Smead, come through King's College. We need to maintain those relationships, but they can play a part by building partnerships with state schools. So we're on this, and if the person who asked the question wants to be in touch afterwards with any ideas, that'd be welcome. It's a very big priority for us.
I'm surprised that we've had mention of England's performance in the recent 50 over World Cup tournament. Who had that on your forum bingo sheet? But obviously, we can't look away from the fact that we've gone from world champions to not making the final. Shall we say, in the space of 4 years, a lot of people are suggesting that's down to the 100. A lot of people are suggesting that there's been a devalued 50 over competition. Obviously, it's not a decision for us to make, but as Somerset, where do we sit on the 50 over versus the 100 competition? Are we still advocating 50 over cricket over the 100? Are we advocating a Somerset-based 100 team? Where do we as Somerset see the future of those two competitions?
Yeah, well, if you count the 100 and the Blast and the One Day Cup, there's kind of 3 competitions. But as you say, the 100 and the One Day Cup are running in parallel, and all the broadcasting money and the best players want to be in the 100 for whatever reason, and that's likely to continue. There may be minor changes to the schedule around that. So I think I mean, if I just say what I personally think as opposed to what the strategy should be, I love the Blast and I love the 4-day cricket, and the One Day Cup is less inspiring now than it was, because although it's great for bringing young cricketers into the team and giving them some experience, it's not, we're unable at the moment to field our best team. That's just a personal view. But as long as England and the ICC that governs world cricket are playing in tournaments at every level, we have to be competitive at every level. And I do have a bit of a grumble about the England white ball squads. We just had new squads picked for the tournaments coming up against West Indies and others. Why is it that we have a T20 England squad and a T50 or 50 over squad with not a single Somerset player in either when we won the Blast? No room for Smead, no room for Banton. Craig Overton, admittedly, is out with recovering from an operation. But I just think I'm going to find the right way of raising this with ECB. I think it's great for them. It's great for us to have our players playing for us. But I think the overlooking of some of the talent in our team, our captain as well, a fantastic player, all-rounder. We should be. They're not noticing just how good we are. And I think one of the reasons actually is that in addition to having good individuals, we've got an amazing team spirit, which is like having an extra player. You see it in the fielding in the Blast. And so you get better performances from individual players. But actually, it's completely wrong, in my view, that those players are overlooked. And so if England are going to compete at level, they've got to get a little bit more imaginative about their selections. That's obviously a particular Somerset view, but I think it's important.
Another question is coming from Harry, which you've covered most of there. He's asked about the importance of the views of the membership, which is probably an ideal opportunity. Gordon might like to chime in on this regarding the importance of our elected member directors, who are the voice of the many, if you like.
Well, we have 3 member directors who were elected in the run up to the AGM by the membership Chrissy, Richard, and Jeff, and they're all making a significant contribution at the board. As chair, I take their views very seriously, not just on the views of the membership, incidentally, but in general, because they're committed people who love Somerset and love cricket. And Peter Wanless, our president, did a big survey, which some of you would have seen, where he surveyed the membership more broadly, got some very, very strong messages back about wanting to see cricket, a Somerset team that could compete at the top table, wanting to see young players from the region coming through into our team, and so on. So we are very in touch with the members, and the member directors do a good job of that. But the whole board wants to be in touch with the membership. And Peter, our president, has made a point of doing that survey, and I think at some point in the future we'll want to repeat it. But Gordon, you might want to add on this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know the Heart and Soul survey. So firstly, to say good evening to everyone. And I just want to remind everybody first, we are European champions, you know. England beating Holland means they're European champions. So they've slipped down from world champions to European champions. Look, yeah, I know Peter is intending running that survey every other year, just to keep in touch. I think that also keep in touch with the views on the ground. I think that's really, really important for us as a club. And I'd just like to just repeat something that Michael said there is no straight on option here. The world is moving at pace, and cricket is now becoming globalized. I remember when I first started working in cricket 23 years ago, October and November were when you took a rest. October and November now are two of the busiest months on the calendar. It's a global sport, and it's impossible to decouple the conversations we have about cricket in England and Wales with the global game. You know, the days of having two overseas players coming in April, finishing in September are just long gone. They're never coming back because the game now is completely globalized, and we are part of that global picture. We don't own our summer anymore, is the harsh reality. There are other competitions around the world that take place during our summer. And I just pick up on one point that was made there about one-day cricket. I think what the board said, I think it was last May, or May of last year, during the high performance review that Andrew Strauss led, is we said that what was really important was to have a balanced diet of cricket for our members and supporters throughout the summer.
Yeah.
And that's really, really important to us. And when we're at the table, I mean, Michael and I have been at the table for 2 meetings about the 100 over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's about the balance. It's about the across the whole summer. Should the one-day competition be played at the beginning of the season, for instance, and having it in a block? When we won it in 2019, that's what was the case. From memory, is that we started the season with that. The key here is to get the future of the 100 sorted, nailed down, because it is so fundamental to what the rest of the summer looks like. And one of our priorities, as Michael touched on, is during the school holidays, if we're going to inspire the Southwest through cricket, which is our purpose as a club, and that purpose will outlive everyone on this meeting, on this call, is if we're going to do that, we need rich content in school summer holidays to do that. And that is the point that we're making really, really strongly. And as Michael says, we're being listened to. I'd like to say one or two other things, whilst I'm on a roll, Spencer, if that's okay, is that and it's a bit dry, this subject, and I know people sort of roll their eyes when I start talking about money and broadcasting and things, but I guess the purpose of tonight is really to explain what is happening in that context, because those two things, broadcasting and money, are fundamentally critical to the future of cricket in this country. And what we've now got, the reason they're so critical now, is that we have got a world where cricket inflation, as Michael and I call it, is rampant. So what I mean by that is that you've got competitions around the world. I think we're up to about 17 domestic T20 competitions around the world, where players now from around the globe can go and ply their trade and earn good money playing in these alternative competitions. So they don't have to anymore play in our system. Happily, one of the things that Michael was lobbying for was, look, if one of our players goes to those competitions, we want compensated, because Somerset Cricket, whether it be the foundation or the club, have paid for that player's development all the way through. And if a player plays in one of those competitions, then we should be properly rewarded. So the thing that we understand is happening at ICC level is there's been an acceptance of that, and an acceptance that for a domestic T20 competition to get authorization, then there needs to be a minimum number of homegrown players playing in that competition. So when you think about what that means, it means that not anybody can just pop up and create a competition and happen. So it makes it difficult for some countries around the world just to have a pop-up competition. And the other thing that is now being worked on in advance is what that compensation scheme looks like for clubs like ours. If one of our players who have come through the pathway, which is quite important to note, that if someone comes our pathway and goes on to play for another counties, we will still get a reward for that player playing another competition. And those conversations now are really advanced, which we're really pleased about. The funding discussion and broadcast. So let me remind everybody about this. We're incredibly lucky in this country to have Sky Sports. When you think about cricket broadcasting 20 years ago, 25 years ago now, and the thought of being able to watch an overseas tour live on TV was just a pipe dream. We all switched on a Test match special on our radios and then put that under the duvet and put our earpiece in and listened to that. We all did that, and then we went back to sleep at some point. Now you can watch all these matches live, so we should be very grateful to Sky for their investment in cricket per se, and we would be in a very difficult place without them. Sky generate 90% of the ECB's income, 90%. So they're a fundamental player for us, because 45% of our income at Somerset comes from the ECB. So those two things are absolutely fundamentally critical, and taking the broadcaster on the journey is going to be fundamentally important for the ECB. So for finance is a challenge, and is an increasing challenge because inflation's rampant, and actually cricket's income is slightly down. So the first time in 23 years, cricket's income, and I mean cricket's ECB's income, is down in real terms, because it's a flat deal, and when you factor in inflation over 5 years, it's 20% down, which means there's no bailout fund from ECB anymore, which has been the case for my 23 years in the game, which makes the broadcaster even more important. So Sky like the 100. Some people on this call won't like to hear that. It's a reality. It's good for their business. It's good content. It gives them a broader audience, a broader reach from the traditional cricket audience, and the 100 isn't going anywhere. And I think that's the point that Michael was making, is we have to embrace it. We have to be in it to be at the top table if we're going to inspire the Southwest through cricket. And we'll do everything we can. And we're landing a few punches in that fight, I think would be fair to say, Michael, that the importance of the 6 million people in the Southwest being engaged in the competition in the height of summer is fundamentally critical. And I do genuinely believe we're being listened to, and we're very optimistic about the outcome from that. The big question that's being asked around the game is how, in the world of flat income, high inflation, growing costs, how do we generate more investment in the game? And that is the conversation that will be taking up a lot of airtime over the coming weeks, and already is, and some lateral thoughts about what that looks like. So I don't know if I pause at that, Spencer, and there's a few things I want to say, but I'll just pause at that before everybody falls asleep. and
Well, it's
happy
my
to
young
take.
son's bedtime now, so that
Yeah.
if you could help him go to sleep, so he doesn't run in here asking for a choc ice like he did when we did one of these previously, that'd be great. Thank you for that, Gordon. I know that there's some questions coming in that I know that you're going to cover off a little bit later on, like women's game, ground development, what Somerset's plans are for the immediate and
Can I
short.
touch on that one? Can
Yes.
I touch on the women's game, because it's a really good point and timely to bring that in.
Because someone mentioned that we used to be proud of being the home of women's cricket. Are we still proud to be the unofficial home of women's cricket?
Well, very. And Michael mentioned the Transforming the Women's Game award from the other night, and I don't think we've scratched the surface yet. By the way, I don't think we've even started on the journey of transforming the women's game, because the opportunity that gives us is, obviously, it's the right thing to do is to embrace women within the game, women and girls, into our game, and it's the right thing to do on a human level. But just think about it from a business perspective. You double your market. So can you imagine, and I've said it before, can you imagine if cricket becomes like tennis, where you have two different tournaments and different tournaments going on, but under the one umbrella of one sport? That's hugely beneficial. So when you look at what's going on in the world, Arsenal v Chelsea women get 40,000 people watching that. I mean,
Cool.
can you imagine if you had that 3 or 4 years ago, that you had 40,000 people watching a women's game of football? We've seen it ourselves. First to sell out the ODI against the Australia, Michael mentioned, ahead of sales. The graph's even better on sales for the Pakistan one-day game on the 26th of May, by the way. Buy your tickets here. So can you imagine the potential that gives it? So as a club, and talking about what's important to Somerset coming closer to home, having been up there about the global picture, women's cricket is going to be critical to this club going forward, because 5-6 years' time, it's going to be unimaginable for a professional sports club in this country not to have a women's team that's really vibrant and really progressive. And we're embracing that. And I think
on that, Gordon, the 100 is actually, whatever else you think about the 100, the way it's got women's and men's game together and playing double headers regularly, that's a big asset.
Massive asset. And I think we've got more to do. So I texted Lauren Filer about 4 weeks ago, and I need to chase. I said, I need your England shirt and I need it signed so I can put it up in the ground. Because if you look round our ground, it's male dominated. It's images of Somerset heroes and legends of the past, which is great, but they're all men. So we've actually, my view, got to embrace the women's game even further and do that over time to make sure that we're seen as a gender equal club, so that we can then take advantage of that growth of the women's sport and cement that into our club going forward.
Before we go on to some of the subjects that I mentioned that we know you're going to speak about, I've had a couple of questions in about schedule. It's that time of year where fixtures are imminent and everyone's champing at the bit to find out when they can book their holiday and fit it in between home games and all that sort of thing. A lot's been made about when is best to schedule the 4-day county championship matches. Is it Thursday to Sunday? Is it Friday to Monday? Is it Monday to Thursday? Do we think that the game broadly as a game needs better scheduling, and is it just down to compromising potential commercial income of weekend games? What do you think of the schedule as it stands?
Just to say, Spencer, before Gordon answers the question, if Gordon was ever on Mastermind, this would be his special subject. So I'm going to leave it to him.
It's look, in my old job, we used to have a chart, and just to let everybody know how the fixtures start to take place, is you have a chart, and it's an Excel spreadsheet, and then you have a colour for each competition. And Alan Fordham, who's a fantastic person at the ECB, has the thankless task of putting this chart. So you put yellow, 4 days, county championship round 1, county championship round 2, international cricket, women's cricket, the one-day competition, T20, the 100, the Charlotte Edwards Trophy, Rachel Hale Infantry, and he's got to try and make this chart work. And it is the most complicated job I remember one year working with Alan, we had 67 drafts. And when we got to draft 67, we said, right, that's as good as we're going to get it. And it wasn't perfect because that's impossible. And the thing that makes it impossible is if you have a ground. So when we hold an international match, you need at least 6 days before that match to allow the ground staff to prepare the pitch, which means Somerset have got to be away from home. And it becomes really, really complicated. So what we've asked for is just a clear narrative, is a diet that's balanced. At the minute, if you look at our schedule, and I don't need to tell everybody this because we are living it and breathing it as a sort of Somerset family, is the front end and middle of the season is really congested. And then we've got this dearth of cricket in August and September. That's got to change, right? Because I think we had last year, I think after the 27th of July, we had the 4 Royal London games. It's Royal London, Metrobank it became, didn't it? We had the 4 one-day games with, as Michael said, 9 players missing, plus 4 injured. Lads, I think Sean Dixon did a fantastic job as captain of that group of young players. Young players benefited from it, but it wasn't top-flight cricket. And then we had one championship match at the end where I think it rained for 2 or 3 days. Not good enough. And we have been making that point. So our point is the scheduling is challenging. It's the diet across the whole summer and the balance of it that's the critical thing to get right. And you have to start with the 100 to do that. You have to get that fixed because it's such a key component of that. We're not going to see much change in 24. It will be better in that you've got 9 rounds of championship cricket this year with weekend cricket, meaningful weekend cricket. So there's 9 rounds of championship cricket where there's meaningful weekend. And I mean meaningful days 1 or 2 over that weekend, or 2 or 3, not just Saturday day 4, which may or may not take place. So that's good for people who want to watch more county cricket at times when they're available. And the bank holiday cricket is looking good. And just in timing, we're looking, I think, well, we're getting a first draft of the fixtures this week, and we're working on the detail. And I suspect you're going to be finding over the next week it will start to. I'm not going to promise what day it's going to come out, but it is imminent.
And one other change that's been made, Gordon, that's worth drawing to people's attention is the blast group games are going to happen, and then the finals, the quarterfinals and finals day will be in September this year, because this year there's a T20 World Cup right in the middle of where finals day would have been. Yeah,
it's a really great point, Michael. Thanks for that. Is that June is wiped out in terms of World T20 is when it's taking place in the US and the Caribbean. And obviously that means the world's best players will be away playing in that, which makes overseas signings very challenging. But Andy's doing a lot of work on that right now. But what it also means is you before and after the World Cup is a bit hunched up, because it means Sky's content back here, they can't do much in June because they're out at the World Cup, but it congests it. So the group stages of the Blast will be before, will be in May, June as normal. Then there'll be a break, and the quarterfinals and finals are at the back end of the summer, in I think late August and September. So that is a difference, but that's for 1 year, and then they'll review that and see how it works. There are pros and cons. Some ways it's good, in other ways it's not. But we'll see how it goes.
I'd like the games to be whenever Matt Henry's available myself.
Well, we put that request in, but let's see how that goes.
Before we come on to your section, Gordon, we've had an interesting question come in that doesn't necessarily mention the 100. Does the club believe that in order to compete against other elite franchise leagues, private investment of some sort could be required?
Shall I start on that, Gordon?
Yeah, yeah.
I think the short answer to that is yes. So, and we've said repeatedly, Gordon and I, to meetings like this and the board, that if that became a reality for us, or the prospect of it became a reality, we would consult the membership at that point. And obviously a lot depends on the nature of the private investment and what it goes into. but it is very clear, I think, to all of the counties now, actually, that simply relying on funding you can raise yourself, or the money that comes from the ECB, in our case 45%, but in some counties it's like 70 or 80%. Simply relying on that is not going to cope with the globalization of cricket. You're not going to be able to recruit the best players. So we will need some private investment. And the real question is, what is the relationship with the private investor? What's the deal there? So I think it's coming to every county, any county, and all such organizations around the world. We have to get ready to control that and make sure that it's still the club we've always loved, and will continue to be the club we've always loved into the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that was absolutely spot on, Michael. Really, and I think everybody will have read, or a lot of people have read, in the media, rumours, speculation about overseas parties being interested in other counties and investing in them, and people who would never have invested in cricket before suddenly emerging as looking to acquire what they call assets. Yeah, and that's a reality. We know that they're, for cricket, I'm not saying Somerset at all. That's not the case at this moment in time. But America, Middle East money, what does Saudi Arabia do? The budget that Saudi Arabia have to buy world sport is £300 billion. Just get your head around that, right? So they've already done golf, football. So there will, as Michael says, there will be interest. And it will be our job as a club, if it comes our way, and we haven't had any at this point, but if anybody comes our way, we will immediately share that with the membership and decide what that allows us to do. And at the same time, learn lessons from other sports. I mean, you look at, there's something called a fit and proper owners test in football and rugby, and there are lessons to be learned from there. So it's a long way down the line, but it would be naive to think that cricket was just going to continue as it's always continued, and you weren't going to have that type of interest in clubs and in the game more generally.
I think just continuing the conversation, Gordon, I think the critical thing is to be strategic about. So for us as a club, but also for English and Welsh cricket, to have a strategy, to think that's what we'd like to see, so that when an investor comes, you say, well, how is it going to fit into this strategy? Can we judge it against these strategic goals, rather than, oh my God, look at a lot of money, what should we do? Which is, you're going to make serious mistakes. And we've seen lots of League and Premier League football clubs blunder terribly because they see the pound signs and the millions and the zeros and think, oh, that'd be great. And then they end up like Cardiff have struggled, Reading have struggled. I'm just mentioning two clubs. So we need to be clear what we want. If there's going to be investment, which there will be, what do we want it to do for our club?
As you were saying, Michael, that if that offer ever came our way, A, we'd consult, but B, it would be the members' decision.
Yeah.
What they want to do. Simple as that. But yeah. I'll just repeat, we haven't had any offers, we haven't had any interest, but we know that something's going to come down the line in due course.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Gordon, if you would like to take the floor now, if you like, and cover the topics that you feel are important, because I know that they will cover off quite a few of the questions that have been asked in the chat, and I frankly don't want to steal your thunder, if I'm honest.
Well, I've kind of hijacked part
and
of
then I'm just going to drop out at 8 o'clock, as Spencer mentioned, so I'll just drop out quietly at that point. But I've very much enjoyed the conversation and look forward to hearing 10 minutes of Gordon's view of the world.
No problem. Yeah, so look, I've kind of covered a few of my points so far by hijacking Michael's section.
Welcome.
But the one thing I just want to reiterate to people is that, we've talked about a lot of this stuff before. Discussions around the 100 are taking place now. So Michael and I have attended 2 sessions. Discussions around the future of the professional women's game are taking place now. I'm on a working group looking at that. Discussions around ECB funding are taking place shortly, I'm attending a meeting in Birmingham on a group on Friday to start that discussion. And on that one, we're looking at two things from a Somerset perspective, and we've said it before, but I'll repeat it, and we're going very, very hard about this, is that if we deliver success, or if a county delivers success for cricket, e.g. generating, developing England players, for instance, we need to be properly rewarded, and we don't feel we are right now. We get some money, but it's nowhere near enough in return for the value that gives the game in this country. And the other thing we're after is a slug of money to help us redevelop the ground, because that was one of the other things I think, Spencer, you said was in the chat. Now, we've done a lot of work on this, a lot of work over the last 12 months, led by Nathan Goddard, one of our excellent directors, on looking at what the possibilities are for our ground. So at the minute, the truth is that we've got a very tired cricket ground. The Botham stand and the Ondaatje stand in particular are very tired. They're costing a lot to maintain. And basically what happens in that scenario is your cost goes up and your income for using them goes down, because they're not very nice facilities. So we have no option but to develop. And what we need to do is find the capital to be able to develop the ground and create a ground that's there for four things, and the four principles of any change. One is to provide our members and supporters with top-notch facilities that allow them to really enjoy coming to our ground and be proud of the ground when visitors come too, because I know that our supporters really value that. Our members and supporters value being proud of the ground. And I think there's parts we shouldn't be proud of, so we need to fix that. So members and supporters facilities, player and coaches facilities. So it'd be surprising to hear that when we sit down with players and talk about the future, it's not all about money. That's obviously important to them, but it's also about the facilities, about the coaching setup. Are they going to get better? Are they going to progress their career? So having a real centre of excellence with excellent facilities indoors and out for players and coaches to work in is important too. So members and supporters, players and coaches, community facilities. Our job's to inspire the Southwest. We need to ensure that the facilities are usable by our communities, the communities that we're here to serve. That's important as well. And then the last bit that's important is that we need those facilities to be able to generate money for the club to reinvest in cricket. We're not here to make money. We're here to generate money for the club to reinvest in our facilities and invest in cricket. And any facilities development are going to have to take those four things, achieve those four things. So we know what we can do. We know what that could look like. And what we're doing now is working on how do we find the investment to be able to invest in that, because we just don't have that money at this particular moment in time. We don't have that money. So we're exploring that right now. And then as soon as we've got a real plan to take to the membership that we think is doable, then we will obviously communicate that at pace.
Can I just add on that, Gordon? Because not least because the credit is yours, and so it's you're too modest to mention it. But the relationship we've built with the local authority is really strong, and they will be very supportive of the kind of redevelopment, because they know how important Somerset County Cricket Club is to Taunton and its future. And that's a great dialogue, isn't it?
It's totally true. And they've been fantastic partners. But as everyone knows, they've got financial challenges, as a lot of local authorities do. So there's no magic money tree there.
No.
But they've been very supportive. I have to reiterate that. You're absolutely right, Michael. I think the other thing that we're doing as a club is, and have to continue doing, is to make the most of every single pound. So we have to stretch every pound. So you look at our player recruitment, and we tend to recruit players who can play red and white ball cricket. Some of them have a white ball bias, if you like, who are natural white ball cricketers but can play red. and then you've got one or two who are red ball cricketers like James Rue, who can play white ball as well. And we have to do that. We haven't got the privilege of a Surrey or a Hampshire who basically are building two squads. We can't do that. We just haven't got the resources. So we have to make the maximum use of the resources we have. And Jason and Andy do a tremendous job on that, I think. And we're talking about Bashir and Bash and James going to Dubai. So one of the things that Bash will be doing is working with Graham Swan for a couple of weeks. He is going to have, there's 6 spinners going, and Graham Swan is going to be working with them. Well, what value that is tremendous for him to be able to gain that experience. So I think the ground development, maximising every pound that we've got to remain competitive. The financial arrangement with the ECB is going to be critical, and all those discussions, the women's game, the 100. So you can see how many plates that our board are spinning at the one time. And whilst that's frustrating, you'll find that once one lands, then there's 2, and then there's 3, and things fall into place pretty quickly. And that's exciting. It's not easy, and it's not going to stay the same. I would repeat Michael's point. This is a T-junction, not a crossroads. We haven't got the choice just to stay as we've always been. We're going to have to evolve as cricket evolves.
You mentioned obviously finance and funding and things like that. An element of that that's key is the fact that we need to diversify and grow and create new revenue streams, don't we? Which is why you see things like a murder mystery dinner at the Cooper Associates County Ground cropping up, things like that. Those events bring income, which then can be reinvested into cricket. So that is something that we are working on, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And I think what I would say is that our membership and supporters are essential, but not sufficient. And I think that's really important. They're the heart and soul of the club and must remain that way. But we can't do this just on members and so we could treble the membership fees. That would make a difference. But of course, we can't do that, and we wouldn't want to do that. So we have to try and generate money from elsewhere, as you say, Spencer, to really sweat what we've got and allow us, just really important, is to allow us to generate money, not to just make money. It's not about that. It's generating money to feed cricket and make sure we can sign Tom Cole-Cadamore, Matt Henry, Peter Siddle, and so on. That's what we do with the money.
I just want to add on that before I drop out. I noticed when we recruited from Nottinghamshire and he joined Jake Ball, who's going to be with us next season.
Yeah.
One of the things he said in his interview, I guess you did the interview, Spencer, probably, but he said that he was delighted to be coming to Somerset for a number of reasons, but one of them was he's played here before and he's seen how passionate and committed the supporters are, and he looks forward to playing in front of the supporters and the members. And the members, as Gordon is saying, and the supporters are obviously fundamental to our finances, although they're not sufficient, but they are known around the country for being an inspiring place to play. Other cricketers see what happens in Taunton and they admire it. And Jake Ball is a case in point.
And worth commenting, Michael, on that, I think it's such a good point, is that every overseas player that has been here when I'm here, who's played T20 in particular, says it's just an incredible place to play. And because the atmosphere is so fantastic, it's sold out and so on. And the same principle applies for 4-day cricket. That support you allude to, Michael, there. And that's a reputation we've got. And that's why I think every overseas player since I've been here wants to come back.
Yeah, and Jake Paul is, Nottinghamshire is a great club and we know their leadership and we like and admire them. But Jake plays most of his county cricket in front of an almost empty Trent Bridge. And playing in Taunton will be quite a different experience.
Rumour has it as well that Jake Ball may well be a fellow Evertonian, so I may have a new favourite. I mean, I don't think that's why we signed him, but
I wish we'd known that. That would have ruled them out.
Who would have thought that both Everton fans have ended up at the same place?
Very unkind. Very unkind. This is a cricket forum. We're not here to talk about football.
Thanks very much, Spencer and everybody. Have a good rest of the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. All the best.
Thank you. Couple of questions coming in regarding the development that you touched on just now, and the word fire pool is coming up a few times. Is that something that's potentially on the table or being discussed in darkened rooms?
Well, we've looked at all options, and we know there's a piece of land on fire pool there that needs a use. I think what's really important here is that I could share lots of lovely architects' drawings, and tell you what, architects love a drawing, don't they? They love a sheet which got a lovely picture on it, and I love looking at them. But I think that the important thing is that when we engage with the membership on that, it's not just a vision that would be lovely to achieve. It's got to be doable, and we're not at that point yet of actually having finance in place to be able to share something meaningful. We've most certainly got a great vision of what we want to achieve, and we've now got to do the hard yards, and we're involved in a lot of conversations currently about how we could go about finding the funds to make that happen.
Thank you very much. Obviously, we know that membership is on sale and has been going very well. We've seen lots of lovely coverage in the press about the fact that we're trying to get a member in every single postcode area of the Southwest. So, you know, if you're listening to this, buy a membership, because you might be the only person in your postcode, and we need to turn the entire map green. Otherwise, we're going to look very foolish come May. Yeah. How is membership going? What's membership numbers looking like compared to previous years? And what are we doing to help grow the number of members? Because it's absolutely vital, isn't it, that we keep increasing those numbers? Because if in sport, in any capacity, any facet, whether it be on the field, off the field, if we stand still, we're going backwards.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I think it's got off to a very fast start. And we're really pleased with where we are. It's a bit difficult to compare it with previous years, in that because we went on sale earlier, which I think was very popular, we got a lot of positive feedback about people being able to come down before the end of the season, get their pack for next year, and they're away. That was good, but it makes it difficult to track how we're doing against previous years. This year, we were broadly on line with where we were in 2022. But some categories were up, some were down. The digital campaign, for those who have seen it online, about the postcode, that we need a member in every postcode, I think personally that's what won the award that Michael alluded to last week. That's the best marketing campaign I've seen in 23 years. Really, really proud of that, because it's what we are. We're a Southwest club, and we're basically asking our region to rise, as the strap line is, and become members, because membership is very, very important to us. And that's not just about money. It's about retaining the heart and soul of the club, which is so fundamentally important at a time when a number of clubs are seeing a big drop-off in membership. We're not seeing that, touch wood, at this moment in time, and need to fight really hard to ensure we don't.
I've had a question from Harry regarding Lewis Gregory. I can confirm that Lewis Gregory's contract is for red ball and white ball. Panic not, Harry. Another quick question regarding ground development. How important is it that ground development is appropriate? I mean, I think the beautiful thing about the Cooper Associates County Ground is it is still, despite all the development that's happened, even in the 13 years that I've been there, that it is still quintessentially a cricket ground. It's not a homogenous bowl. It is still very much the home of Somerset County Cricket Club. The two church towers in the background, the Quantocks in the background the other way. It is still a cricket ground rather than a humongous stadium, isn't it?
Well, I think it's a great point, and I think it needs to be a cricket ground, not a stadium. I think that's if you look around the country, I think Trent Bridge is a lovely cricket ground. It doesn't feel like a stadium to me. It's my favourite. Well, everybody's favourite's Lord's, isn't it? But I've got a real soft spot for Trent Bridge because it's a proper cricket ground, and that's what Taunton needs to be. The other point I would make is that when you look at our ground, we've got this wonderful benefit of a river straight behind it, and the Quantocks in the distance. You can't see it from the cricket ground unless you're on the very top of the Marcus Scotland Pavilion. And that's something, when we've been working with the architects, is saying, how do we actually capture, how do we allow our ground to capture the beauty of Somerset and the countryside and the river at the back there. How can we capture that within any designs? And they most certainly have been weaved in. But fear not, you'll not find it's a stadium. It's a cricket ground that retains its essence.
Mm-hmm. I guess one point to make out that's important is that any decision that is taken is purely for the long-term benefit of Somerset County Cricket Club, isn't it? It's not about chasing short-term cash. It's about ensuring that future generations are in a position to tell us how badly we're doing things in years to come.
Yeah. We don't have any choice. So this is the left-right, the T-junction I'm talking about. If we don't do something, we earn less money and maintenance costs more. We can't afford to fund cricket. We become a national county in time playing Wiltshire in a 3-day game. That's what happens if we don't make that transition. It may take 5-10 years, but it's going to come. What we need to make absolutely sure of is that we develop the ground to be able to achieve the 4 principles I mentioned, one of which is about providing facilities that allows us to generate money to fund cricket and maintain those facilities. And then it goes round and round and round. It's critical. If you don't do that, there's only one way you're going to end up. And that's not good. And that's what the board is very, very mindful
of. Mike in the chat is worried that the club doesn't fund the Somerset Women's Club shirts with names and numbers on. I can assure Mike that the Somerset women wore the same shirt as the men this year, and they did indeed have numbers on the back. So Mike, don't worry, we're all over that already. Another Michael, rather than Mike this time. What are plans regarding making the club more and more sustainable? And this is something that came up at the ECB conference this week and the recent Business of Cricket Awards, the importance of clubs becoming more sustainable, and it's becoming more important. What are we doing to ensure that we are, again, leaders in the field in this area?
I think it's a good question, and I think that it's fair to say that we've been behind where we need to be. So I think this year was the first year we've actually had green bins and waste bins, right? Unbelievable, right? But Sarah Trunks has led a great piece of work on that just to get some basics in place. And obviously, in any development that we do, sustainability will be the heart of it. And as you say, at the conference last week, ECB had their head of sustainability, did a presentation on what that could look like. ECB going to provide some support from the centre to help those that are developing to become more sustainable and aim towards net zero over time. And that's most certainly on our agenda.
Perfect. The questions seem to have dried up a little bit. So, and without Sir Michael here, whether or not we continue for the full 90 minutes is entirely debatable. But what have you got to say to the people that are here once again supporting this forum? Because it is absolutely essential, isn't it? We can host as many forums as we like, but if nobody turns up, it's all fairly pointless other than us having a nice chat about how our prospective football teams have failed miserably at the weekend. It is crucial, isn't it, that we host events like this and give people the opportunity to have their say, because no one's going to benefit from people hiding behind various doors and things like that, I think.
Well, what we're trying to do, we're not just having these events for the sake of it. We're trying to communicate what's going on in a very fast-moving environment and a very complex environment. I mean, cricket is incredibly complex when you think about all the things we've talked about tonight. But what we're trying to do is just to keep people up to date with where we are, making sure that our membership and supporters are informed. And that's why we're doing these. And we will continue to do that on a regular basis, not for the sake of it, but to make sure that we communicate outcomes. And we'll do that in the new year too.
We've had a number of questions from Sea Spirit, which makes another good point here about Anya Shrubsole stands or things like that. We've mentioned the lack of female representation around the ground. On the Ondaatje family stand, there are pictures of Heather Knight and Anya Shrubsole and things like that. We are looking at ways, aren't we, of immortalising in a slightly more befitting way legends of the club and people like Anya who have contributed so much to the women's game, having come through the Somerset pathway. And as we know, we love watching one of our own, and Beaches won the World Cup, for heaven's sake.
Watch the space. I'm not going to say any more.
Very, very well advised. Very well advised. Well, I think that, I don't know what you think, Gordon. Maybe potentially now time to wrap things up.
Yeah, just like to thank everybody for taking the time on a wet November evening to join us, and by doing so, just demonstrate their passion for our great club. It really is appreciated.
We have had one more question in, and you've mentioned a wet weather evening, which brings us to a great point about outfield drainage. Now, I, for one, was amazed that it went from sand to green in a couple of days, and I almost danced the jig of joy when we had all that rain and there wasn't a giant puddle outside the Colin Atkinson Pavilion. There's been a lot of sand, but how are we looking on that?
Well, I think, just so everybody's aware, at the end of the season, we invested a fair bit of money in putting a secondary drainage system in, with particular attention on that area that flooded quite easily in front of the Atkinson Pavilion, and that's now in. And of course, you lose every blade of grass. You've got sand there, and then you start to, in my job and Spencer's job, you start to live in quite a sad life. You wake up every morning saying, "Is the temperature warm and is it wet?" Because that's the best combination for grass to grow back. And it's grown back pretty well. It's still got a bit of a way to go, but what we've done is asked in our fixture requests, you get asked what fixture requests you have. And our fixture requests, the first 2 rounds of the championship are away from home, to give the grass a bit longer to come back, because that's obviously really important. But we're pleased with how that's gone. And we'll continue to count the blades on the outfield between now and next April.
It's come on so nicely. We talked about diversifying income streams. I was going to suggest donkey rides around the outfield in the off season, but the grass has overtaken the sand now, so that's scuppered that, unfortunately. Thank you very much indeed, Gordon, for joining us, and obviously Sir Michael. Thank you everybody else for joining us on the chat, and for Ben Warren as well, of course, the award-winning Ben Warren, for not letting it fall over and getting rid of any technical difficulties. Do you want to just finish off by saying bringing things to an official conclusion, Gordon?
Yeah, well, thanks again to everybody for joining. Thank you to you, Spencer, and to Ben for giving up your evening to make this event happen. I know that I get a lot of good feedback from these, and it's your efforts that make them happen, so I'm really appreciative of that. I wish everybody a happy Christmas. I know it's early, but we probably won't have one of these before Christmas. Have a great festive period, winter well, and then we know what it's like. You get to January and it's downhill, and suddenly you're into the summer again, which is the bit we all like. And thank you for that.
Gordon, thank you very much indeed.